Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Ryan and this is Blue Line Optics, and today we are going to go over advanced reticle types, and this is actually part 2 of the reticle type analysis. So part 1 we went over just like really basic reticle types. We were talking about like the German number 4, the mil dot, the duplex reticle, the wide duplex reticle, those kinds of things that are just a little bit more easy to understand. But today we're actually going to be taking a look at some of these really complex long-range reticles that a lot of companies are selling nowadays and that are actually extremely popular. So first off, let's talk about complex reticles. Now, they look really cool. They probably make you feel pretty professional when you're out there shooting like a real sniper or something like that. But it's more than just cool looking, as you can see from the very creative title up here at the top. The reticle exists solely and primarily to refine your shot. It's when you have an object that's there to assist in aiming, it makes the thing that you're aiming at smaller, and it makes it easier to focus on. And what you focus on tends to be where your bullet ends up going. So the first reticle was just a simple crosshair, literally like a crosshair. The original reticles were just pieces of hair that were held across the lens in a crosshair fashion to give the shooter a point of aim. And since this took the scope from just being a blank piece of glass to something that you can actually focus in on, it really helped improve the quality of the shot, and it helped improve the shooter's accuracy. So from there, the reticles grew into a little bit more complex, like a BDC reticle, a mil dot reticle, an MOA reticle, and then advanced reticles. The BDC is just bullet drop compensation reticle, where it has the little hash marks below the center crosshair that allows you to adjust for distance. This became extremely useful, especially with hunters, because then they could just make quick and easy adjustments to adjust for the distance between themselves and the target, because they can't always predict where their target is going to be. And then mil dot, we actually did an entire presentation over that, so I'll link to that in the notes here. The ones that we're going to go over today are the MOA and the advanced reticles. So one thing to note before we really get started here is to be careful not to rely only on the reticle. So precision rifle shooting takes a lot of skill. People who are very good at this don't even need a scope to hit at 1,000 yards. Arguably, they could just do it with just regular sights or with regular iron sights. That being said, it makes your life a lot easier when you use it. But at the same time, you don't want to take this out to 1,000 yards without having your fundamentals done first and foremost. So that's my one sole recommendation, is to make sure that you have the shooting fundamentals down before you go shopping for one of these things and end up spending a bunch of money. Another thing to keep in mind is that a reticle is going to be a part of a company's marketing strategy. And this doesn't make it good, it doesn't make it bad, it just means that you need to keep that in mind. So a company is marketing you a reticle, a very nice reticle, very nice looking reticle. They're marketing it because, you know, it's part of their scope. It's what makes their scope better, right? But you may not need it. Like, you may not need that much. You might be fine with just a simple crosshair, right? You might be fine with just a bullet drop compensation reticle. You really don't know. That this really depends on your use. And that's one thing to keep in mind before you go shopping for scopes, is what exactly are you going to be using it for? Do you really need this really complex Impact 60 or Horus H59 reticle that gives you all these awesome holdovers? Okay, the most useful thing, or the biggest use of a complex reticle, is that it negates the necessity of a turret adjustment, because it lets you do holdovers. As you can see in this reticle right here, it's got these little dots down here to the left and to the right. And that allows you to just move the scope so that your target is now over one of those dots instead of having to adjust the turrets. Again, you may not need this kind of a function depending on what it is you're doing with the scope. So that's why I always recommend you figure out what it is you're going to be using it for first. And so now let's briefly look at the 3 different reticles we'll be looking at. The first one is the Athlon Optics Cronus BTR. well, it's for the Athlon Optics Cronus BTR. Sorry, it's called the APLR FFP IR MOA. So APLR stands for Advanced Precision Long Range, and then rifle scope would obviously go after that. So it's an FFP scope. It has illuminated capabilities, and this one in particular is an MOA scope. So if you take a look at this over here, this is actually what it looks like, and then this is the Cronus itself. Okay. The Cronus was Athlon's flagship product. It's when they really started to hit their stride and let people know that they can make really high quality optics for a pretty low price. The Cronus comes in at about $1799.99, and that is a pretty good price considering all the features that you get with it, especially the really nice reticle here. The next one is the Leupold Mark V HD. This one's the 7-35 by 56 millimeter. So 7-35 magnification with 56 millimeter objective lens. The reticle itself is the Impact 60. Now this whole 7-35 by 56, the other magnifications and objective lenses for this model, the Mark V HD, can have the Impact 62. It's just that this is the one that's pictured here. This is what the Impact 60 looks like, and it's actually a pretty interesting reticle, and it's patented by Leupold themselves, so it's pretty popular, very pricey, but everybody who buys it is extremely happy with it. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the Vortex Razor HD Gen 2, the Horus H59 reticle. This one's really interesting because Horus is very well known for making very high quality complex reticles that are very effective for long range shooters. Now, when Vortex came out with the Razor HD Gen 2, they obviously wanted to leave no stone unturned. They wanted to put everything they possibly could into the scope and to make it as incredibly useful as possible. And so obviously they turned to a company like Horus to help them make that a reality. And I'm really excited to go over the Horus H59 actually. I think you guys are going to find it to be a really interesting rifle scope reticle, I should say. Okay, and the first one we're going to start off with is the Athlon Optics Cronus BTR APLR FFP IR MOA. That's a lot to say. That's definitely a mouthful there. Now, APLR simply stands for Advanced Precision Long Range. BTR stands for Bright Tactical Reticle. FFP stands for First Focal Plane, if you didn't know that already. And if you needed a refresher on what First Focal Plane is, go to our video series about that, about FFP and SFP. It's important to know. IR stands for Illuminated Reticle, which, as you can see here, this reticle has the capability of being illuminated. That's why it turns red. Then MOA is just for minutes of angle, and that's how the reticle is measured. All these little hash marks are various MOA between each other. In fact, they're one MOA between each other. Now, this is an example of the Christmas tree reticle. As you can see, the Cronus BTR has this, what looks like a Christmas tree below the center, and it goes all the way down to 50 MOA. And this allows for the use of holdovers. And I kind of got into that in the last section, where if you just move the scope up or the reticle up, instead of actually doing the little twists and turns with your elevation and windage turrets, you don't have to go through all that work. You just move the reticle up itself and then hold it over one of these, hence a holdover. Now, what makes one of these really useful is having the right amount of distance between the hash marks. For example, the Cronus here, or the APLR reticle, goes down with these bigger hash marks by 5. And then all these little dots are 1 MOA all the way out, because it lines up with the one up here. And that amount of distance makes it, likely that your target is going to end up on one of the dots, so it makes for a much more precise shot, but it also doesn't necessarily overcrowd the point of view, so you're not, like, your point of view isn't completely taken up. So, and this says pretty much exactly what I was just talking about. That being said, we want to also discuss that this goes down to 50 MOA. Okay, so this right here, that's a little hard to see, and I apologize about that. The picture resolution got kind of iffy when I was making it big enough on here. But that goes down to 50 MOA right there. This right here is 45, that's 50. And that's going to allow for a lot of adjustment quite a bit of adjustment. We have people that use these scopes to shoot up to 2 miles, and that, I mean, with that distance, you need pretty much as much elevation adjustment as you can get. And so the fact that it does go down to 50 actually makes this a pretty competitive reticle when it comes to these really high range scopes, or higher price range scopes, I should say. One more thing to note is that as it goes down the Christmas tree, and it earns its name by that, is that it goes farther out. And that's because the farther that you're shooting, the more that wind is going to have an effect on it. And the farther over you're risking that it might push your bullet. So these holdovers give you a really good shot at, pun intended, a really good shot at having your target line up on one of the dots. And then we want to talk about the Impact 60 reticle, which is in this case, on the Leupold Mark V HD. And the model specifically that we're looking at, even though it doesn't matter here because we're just looking at the reticle, and that reticle is available on the other ones. The one that we pulled it from is the 7-35 magnification with the 56mm objective lens. So this is the Leupold Impact 60. This is a patented reticle by Leupold, and it's incredibly popular. And as you start to get more into long range shooting, you're going to really see why. It's an MOA based reticle. And it doesn't necessarily follow the Christmas tree design. I should probably edit that to say it does not necessarily follow the Christmas tree design. It's not quite like that. As you can see, it still kind of has that form right there, but the dots do not expand out as far as the Christmas tree reticle was expanding out. What's really cool about the Impact 60 is that it's a grid of dots that are spaced 2 MOA from each other, and this goes all the way down to 60 MOA. So you're getting even more elevation adjustment here than what you were getting with the Cronus. For really long distances, this is incredibly helpful, just absolutely incredibly helpful. And in fact, this is a very, very, very good scope for very long distances. And I'm talking like distances of up to 2 miles and even farther for those of you that are extremely ambitious. Now, one more thing about the grid design here is that a lot of people, the problem that they run into when they're using reticles like this is that it almost makes the picture really cluttered. And so it's kind of hard to see your target because there's so much stuff that's in the way. With grid lines, that tends to be the case. Now, since these are just dots, it doesn't eliminate that effect necessarily, because as you can see, that could still kind of get in the way. But as you zoom in on the scope here, like on this one that I'm circling right now, there's a lot of space in between these dots. So when you're at a really high magnification, like say you take this up to 35 magnification, and it's all the way looking like it does right here, you're actually going to have a lot of room in between those dots, so it's going to be a lot easier for you to be able to pick out your target. Overall, this scope makes it a lot more likely that your bullet is going to hit the target, and it's going to hit the target where you want to hit the target, especially at those really long ranges. The only disadvantage here is that I can see is that it stops at, I believe that's 14 MOA, right? No, that's 16 MOA. It stops at 16 MOA here and doesn't go any farther. Now, you would probably have to have a pretty strong wind to have that really make an effect. That being said, at a really long range, like you're going to be using something like the Impact 64, that I would imagine you would just want to be prepared for that regardless. That being said, this is still an incredibly popular reticle. There are very few people that have anything bad to say about it. And I honestly really recommend it for a lot of people that are looking for these long range scopes. And now finally, we come to the Horus H59 reticle. Okay, now this one is featured on the Vortex Razor HD Gen 2. That is not the only rifle scope it's featured on. That being said, Horus is usually featured on some extremely high quality optics manufacturers. So US Optics, Vortex, Leupold, all of these are very, very high-end rifle scopes. And a lot of them feature like the Horus H59, the Tremor 3, that kind of stuff. So Horus Vision is a company that specializes in reticle design.
And I'll link to their website. They got a lot of really cool stuff there, and they got some walkthroughs on how to use their reticles. I watched them and stuff like that. They do a very, very, very good job. And these reticles are specially designed to do exactly what we've been talking about this entire time, is to help you make that impact on the target when it's going to count the most. And they have these really, really custom features that you don't see pretty much anywhere else, except for on a Horus reticle. Like, for example, they got these lines that come out here on the subtensions, but then they got these little extra dots to the left, just in case you need that extra windage adjustment, which is great because it's kind of like the Impact 60. It's not taking up as much space over here, but you still have that adjustment if you need it, right? So what we want to talk about, though, is that the extra blank space that was happening with the other two reticles can be a problem, right? If like, say that you need to make an adjustment that kind of goes off of what the Christmas tree or what the Impact 60 was, what was making the adjustment, or would have had the capability to make an adjustment for, then all you got is white space out there. Okay, and you're kind of in trouble when it comes to that. You're gonna have to use your turrets to make that adjustment, because, you know, how else are you gonna do it? You can't just guess. I mean, you could guess, but it's gonna make it more likely that you miss the shot. And what's the point of having a reticle if you're just guessing in white space anyway? Okay, and we already covered the white space there. Now, another thing to note is that there are lines at various spacing above the center line, like these little dashes here. So that's pretty unique. It's not incredibly necessary or anything like that, but it can really help in case you want to make an adjustment down instead of up, I suppose. And then another thing to note is that although this is an illuminated reticle, it has illuminated dots at, I think it's every 2 MOA coming down the reticle below, and then at 10 MOA and 20 MOA it'll have it spaced out too as well. So it's not making the entire reticle illuminated, it's just making, you know, some more essential parts of it illuminated. And so that wraps it up. Just to sum up here, if you want to use these reticles effectively, you want to first and foremost have the fundamentals of shooting down. You don't want to just rely on these things to make your shot. You want to make sure that you know how to shoot a good group at 100 yards with something as basic as just like a duplex reticle. That is going to make sure that when you're making these shots long range, it's more likely that when you make a miss, it's due to a calculation error, and a calculation error you can fix. If you're the one that's making the error, then you're not going to know. You're going to think something else is wrong. And then you're just going to continue messing it up even more. So just make sure you have the fundamentals of shooting down. Don't rely on these as a simple crutch. And then also you want to make sure that you understand the reticle. Understanding the reticle is going to be really important, especially if you're using this in like a competition, if you're using it for hunting. When you're out and about and on the go, knowing what you're looking at is probably the most important thing, so that you can make the correct adjustments that you need. Like, for example, you want to understand what the subtensions are. Right here on the Horus, all these hash marks are a mil apart. That's just something that you really need to know, and you need to know off the top of your head. And then, of course, you want to choose the reticle that's right for you. You want to consider what you're going to be using this for. Are you just going to be shooting deer at like 200 yards? Are you going to be making a 2-mile shot? Are you just messing around at the range and stuff like that? All of that kind of stuff is going to take an effect into what type of reticle that you get. If you're just shooting at 100 yards, you probably, and you're not going to go any farther than that, you really don't need to spend $3,000 on a Leupold Mark V HD, because it's just that's not what that scope is built for. You want to go for probably a much more cheaper option with a much less complex reticle. That being said, these reticles can be extremely useful for you in the long term, in the long range, actually, over a really, really long shot. And I highly recommend them for people that are trying to make those really complex long shots. Now, we're going to be doing some more. We're going to be looking at a couple of other reticle designs and then going over them in this manner. So if you want to keep seeing that, be sure to subscribe to the channel, go to the website, read the blog post, subscribe to the email list if you want. You get 12% off of anything in the store as an email list subscriber, and that's anytime you place an order, you get 12% off. That's just something we do for our fans. And then I also want to know, engage in the comments below. Which one of these was your favorite? Did you like the Horus H59? Did you like the Cronus BTR APLR? Or did you like the Leupold Impact 60? I personally like them all. I do have a favorite. I'm not going to tell you right now, though, but if you guys get engaged below, I might just do that. Until next time, stay tuned. Have a good rest of your day.